Hello, welcome to another webinar of the European Hygienic Engineering and Design Group. Great to see you all logged in. People are logging in from all over the world. And yeah, let's start this webinar.
Thank you. For me, the concept that building work in factories can create problems to ongoing food production went back to the early 1990s. And in the UK, in our chilled food industry, we had a number of fires, primarily because the sandwich panels that we used had a very flammable polystyrene inner core within the sandwich panel. At a slightly later time, towards the late 90s now, the big learner in the States, particularly about building work, was this incident at a Malto factory. Later on, one of my PhD students that did a Margas looked at this and looked at the long-term survival of salmonella strains on stainless steel. And EFSA suggested that the common risk factors for persistence in the food and feed processing environments are inadequate zoning and hygiene barriers. So poor segregation between low risk areas and higher hygiene areas, and poor hygienic design of the infrastructure and the equipment, and inadequate cleaning and disinfection. So if I take an example of a pump, what's its intended use? Well, it might be to pump pasteurized milk. If we then sort of take it to the next stage and perhaps look at the bigger picture of a piece of equipment, then I'd like to take you through it again in a slightly different format. And at that point, I'd like to stop and hand over to Simon. Thank you.
So we have a quick look now at risk assessments and controls. So we'll look at some controls and risk assessments for activities that might need to be considered when building work takes place during live production. So the risk assessment should be completed by representatives of the construction company, the installation company, as well as the food management team on site. It's very important that there's a common understanding between both parties. It might be that we decide that we're going to use a combination of these as well. So looking at the segregation, this is typically via use of screening and barriers. The segregation could be for rooms, for areas, or just for part of the rooms. For example, in the slide there in the bottom left-hand corner is a tent that's been put over a drain for drain maintenance. So when we look at air segregation management, it's really important to protect from dust generation, but also consider a quality aspect, which might be something like odor transfer. So here's an example of a suggested risk assessment. This is for a major refurbishment project being undertaken next to a high hygiene area. And the ideal scenario would be that the construction zone would be entered from external areas. So the food production zones are not compromised in any particular way, and people and contractors, for example, aren't going through these areas to complete the work. And we also need to understand if we require any additional controls going forward, which again is just operational controls which might control hazards that need to be mitigated against. And that is the end of my presentation.
Where are we at that point? I mean, the CPOs are adopting these GFSI guidelines, but they're not compulsory yet, are they?
They J1 and J2, as they stand, are voluntary. So yeah. At the moment, CPOs do not have to bring them into their food standards in their entirety. However, many of the CPOs are down that road already. BRC, I think, is foremost of those. They've taken on more of J2 than any other of the CPOs. And the slide that I showed earlier would suggest that already you are required by BRC, if you wish to meet the standards of BRC version 9, you are required to undertake risk assessments of anything that's building work or installation of equipment, etc., and have been required to do so for over 12 months now.
What wasn't clear to me is what is the difference between those two approaches? Is there a difference? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, so I get there is a subtle difference. The hygienic design risk assessments that we discussed in that are looking at the construction work, the installation work that's in the examples that I gave. So it's looking at what the activities of the construction of the installation and controls that need to be put in place around that work. Whereas obviously HACCP would be looking at the production of the food, the process flow of the food, and concentrating on the safety of the food itself to make sure that that's safe when it goes to the consumer. So the hygienic design risk assessment is looking at the potential for hazards at that point, whereas the HACCP will be looking at the full process of producing the food and putting it onto the market.
Thank you very much for your time, gentlemen, for your contribution to global food safety.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.